It has been stated that people with paranormal abilities, such as psychic mediums, are able to see beyond the veil into the realm of spirits. These individuals are known to have the ability to communicate with spirits and translate messages from the beyond. These individuals have been documented as far back as the Bible to modern day. It has also been stated that on All Hallows Eve, the veil between the spirit realm and the physical grows thinner and allows us to see into the realm of the beyond. I have a question for you. If you could speak to a ghost, what would you ask them?
Now loading Micah's Let's Play.
Good evening, and welcome to Micah's Let's Play. Guess who I am? I'm Micah, because who else would I be? I hope you guys enjoyed that intro. I thought it would be proper to set the tone for tonight's events. This is not like my normal usual gamer discussion or anything I've ever done in the past. Because I'm a massive fan of Halloween, I thought it would be fun to do a spooky stories episode. Now, with that said, let me set a disclaimer. All the stories you're hearing tonight are my own stories, no one else's, and these stories are true because they happened to me in real life. I will be trying to add as much information as possible. Unfortunately, I do not have any video coverage, but I do have art that will take care of some of the supplemental stuff. Now, with all of that out of the way, I have a question for you. Have you ever seen a ghost? And if you have, what happened? Also, guys, fun note, this is premiering tonight, midnight, so all happy Halloween to you all. There's a live chat down below. Click it and join me because I'm in the chat with you. This is a pre recorded show, so unfortunately, this isn't live, but the chat is, so by all means, jump in. Now, I'm going to cover 3 stories tonight. One that happened to me when I was literally between the ages of 2 and 3, one that happened when I was between the ages of 4 and 5, and then one happened when I was 13 years of age. After I share each story, I encourage you to sound off in the comment section, let me know your own experiences, and whether or not you believe me. So, tonight's story, first story, is one that happened to me when, like I said, I was only between the ages of 2 and 3, and I remember this memory. It is so vivid in my mind, it's completely crazy that I can remember this. But with all that said, let me tell you about the kitchen demon. Are you guys ready to hear a truly scary story? Well, buckle up. We're about to begin. As I stated before, this first experience happened to me when I was between the ages of 2 and 3 years old. As you can see here, that's an image of me at that age. And the gentleman behind me is my father. And the house you see me in front of is the house where this event and several events took place. Guys, what I'm about to share with you, literally, it blew my mind when I realized when I got older what really took place. But let me tell you the story of my first spectral encounter with the kitchen demon. Now, as you can see on screen here, this is a layout of my house. I actually remember this house in vivid detail. I don't know how I remember it so well, but I literally remember this house. And I can't believe that I was able to draw it. Now, if you're an architect in the room, I'm so sorry that my dimensions are wrong. I'm not an architect. I'm not a professional artist. I just remember the layout, so I drew it for you. So, the area that I'm highlighting right now is my kitchen where this event took place. Now, my mother was in the kitchen washing dishes and she was facing away from me while doing so. I was on the kitchen floor playing with a toy. I don't know if you guys remember these dolls from the 80s, but they were called, I believe, animals or something like that. Basically, they were hybrids of animals and insects or animals and plants, so on and so forth. And I had one that I was playing with that I was rolling around on the floor. Here's how this event took place. What I recall from this event was that I was on the kitchen floor, sitting down, playing with this doll, where I heard a strange noise. It sounded almost like a cat hiss, but not quite a cat hiss. And it caught my attention and made me look up. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what I saw. This little thing was in front of me, hissing. And when I drew this image, it sent chills throughout my body because I've never drawn this thing before. I only remember it in my mind, and honestly, my artistic skills are not doing this thing justice. Whatever it was gray, its eyes were solid black, and it had a mouthful of sharp teeth, and it hissed at me. And as a small child, all I can tell you was the feelings I felt. I felt danger and I felt threatened. So I immediately got up and ran to my mother's leg. I immediately pressed my face. I remember the dress my mother was wearing. It was a yellow sundress. My mother's hair was cut short. She had a honey blonde color to her hair. As you can see on this image here, this is a picture of my mother Linda and my siblings Marcus and Matthew and my sister Mary when they were small children. This was before I was born. But I remember it. And I remember my mother was listening to music on the radio. And I distinctly remember my mother saying, "What's the matter with mama's baby?" And I remember she dried her hands off on her dress and she kneeled down to pick me up. And she was trying to console me. And I remember the sound of concern in my mother's voice. My mother saying, "Tell mama what's wrong." And all she was trying to do was console why her child was so afraid and crying. Now, mind you guys, I was between the ages of 2 and 3, so my ability to speak was very limited. So I distinctly remember pointing out at the thing over my mother's shoulder, and the only thing I can tell you, because it wasn't in cohesive wording, but the thing is dangerous, and I was pointing at it, and I was terrified, and it stayed there for like a few minutes. And my mother looked where I was pointing. She said, "Mikey, I don't see anything, baby. Mama don't see nothing." And I distinctly remember my mother pulling my head onto her shoulder, and she was bouncing and she was singing, trying to console me. And I think my mother was even praying at the same time as well. And I remember shutting my eyes and opening them and shutting and open and shutting and open. And the thing stayed there for quite some time until I closed my eyes one final time and I opened them and the thing was gone. It was gone. I don't know where it went. I don't know where I don't ever remember seeing it again, but I remember that event. And to be honest with you, you can tell the difference between a memory and a dream that's a memory. This was an actual memory. I remember the color of the floor. I remember my green refrigerator. I remember the dark brown stove we had. Like again, I remember my mother's dress. I can smell her perfume. The memory is too strong for me to just say, "Oh, it was just a dream," because I know it was real. Because I even remember little events happening throughout the day later when my mother went to pick up my brothers from school. That's how powerful that memory was and how truly terrifying that experience was. I can't put into words how terrified I was of the kitchen demon I experienced that day. And now this is what I'm not too clear on. I distinctly remember a smell of sulfur, but I don't know if that's a memory that was added later, like just something my brain was trying to fill in, or something I really smelt the day I experienced this. But what I do know is that in a certain book, it said, "You will know them by their smell." And sulfur is always associated with demonic entities. So, did I really see a kitchen demon? I'll let you decide in the comments. Now that you've heard that story, we're going to move on to the second story of tonight, which I like to call Ghost's Playmate. Ready for more? I hope so, because this one still gives me chills to this day. Now, mind you guys, when I was a little bit older, around the age of 4, I literally remember my 4th birthday. I had a Lion-O birthday cake. Lion-O from, Thundercats. Oh yeah, it was a good birthday. Nonetheless, during this time, I began to have an encounter with a spectral visitor. Someone who I would play with, talk to, interact with on an ongoing day-to-day basis. I remember this little girl as if she was one of my siblings. As you can see here on screen, this is an image of the little girl. And even though, again, my art skills are limited, I distinctly remember her having an Alice in Wonderland style of clothing. I remember she was a blonde white girl with blue eyes. Her dress was light blue. She had a white apron, and she had the Mary Jane styled shoes. And I always remember playing with her. I even remember the sound of her voice. It was just like a normal little girl, and she couldn't have been older than maybe 7 or 8 years of age. So somewhere around the turn of the century is when I encountered this girl. Now again, on the screen, you're seeing the layout of the house of where this took place, where I saw the kitchen demon, along with another variety of things. But we'll keep it 3 stories tonight. So, the little girl, I distinctly remember her shaking my shoulder in the morning to wake me up and say, "Hey, let's go play. Let's play hide and seek." I remember these words as if she said them yesterday. And like clockwork, every morning around maybe 2 or 3 or maybe 5 or 6, I would be woken up to go play with this little girl. I remember one morning in particular where my mother woke up and was like, "Micah, what are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm playing with my friend." And I remember my mother walked out of her bedroom where I was in the dining room. As you can see on the screen, I was in the dining room. And I was playing with my friend who was on the other side of the table, and we were just running around together. And my mother looked and was like, looking like, "Who's in the house?" And I remember pointing and saying, "Mom, she's right there. Mommy, she's right there." And the little girl was giggling. And in my mind, I thought it was just a fun game we were playing. But my mother had a look on her face. Now, guys, as a child, I didn't understand the expression. As an adult, I fully understand that was a look of fear. My mother said, "Mikey, Mama doesn't see anybody." And saying this now, I'm getting chills. My mother telling me, "Mikey, there's nobody there." And I was like, "Mom, she's right there. Like, Mommy, she's right there." I was pointing at the girl. And she was just looking like she doesn't see me. The ghost was like, you know, like, "It's only Tuesday." And I couldn't believe it. And I remember my mother immediately picking me up off the ground, taking me into her room with her and my father. And my mom said, "Mikey, it's too early to play, baby. You gotta lay down. It's too early. You'll play with your friend later." And Mom, if you're watching this, do you remember that? Do you remember the days I used to get up super early in the morning and run around and play with this little girl? Guys, my mother actually saw this girl once. One evening, my mom woke up from a night and she saw someone sitting at the foot of the bed. And she thought it was my sister Mary. Now, my oldest sister Mary is deaf. She cannot hear. She's been like that since she was about maybe 2 or 3 years old. And my mother called to the girl but tapped on the bed to say, "Hey, Mary, it's time to go to bed." But then my mother took a second look and noticed the unusual riotous of curls atop the girl's head. Now, this is the image again of the little girl. The little girl had Shirley Temple curls, but pent up in like a bun style of that era. And my mother realized that was not her daughter, but someone sitting on the bed that didn't belong to her. And my mother told us about this years later. But guys, this is the most terrifying part of the story. And this is getting a little emotional for me because I remember this terror so well. I remember one day waking up and I went to go play with my friend. And I remember seeing her standing in my living room and her back was to me. Now, mind you, we always played hide and seek and she always won. But this day, I felt I'm going to get her today. And I remember reaching out and feeling my arms go through a little girl that was standing in front of me. And I felt the iciest chill. And I was like, wait, my arms went through her. And she turned around with a look of utter horror on her face. And right before my eyes, she vanished. I don't know how to explain that to you other than that was the day I realized the person who I saw. I then understood why no one else could see her, and I was only 4. And I remember seeing her later on, while we still lived in this house. I still remember seeing her one night, or nights, nights, where she would be in a back den that was in our home. And there were these strange green hands on her shoulder, holding her in place, like on her shoulders, like a parental figure or an authoritative figure. And she always had a look of fear in her face. And that's how I would always see my friend. Certain nights, she would be in the back playroom. Again, as you can see on the screen, this is the hallway that led to that back den where me and my brothers used to play, and my sister. And this little girl would appear randomly. And I remember telling my mom, Mom, she's right there. And my mom would pull my hand away and say, baby, there's nobody there. There's nobody there. And I remember the day we moved from that house. And I looked at my front door, and there she was. And she looked so sad. And I was sad because I didn't fully understand why we were leaving her. But I knew she was different. And I never saw her again when we moved from that house. Guys, when I tell you that as an adult now, that I fully understand what I was doing, I was playing with a person that had been dead for probably maybe 100 years or more. Now, I've never gone to investigate further because that's just not something I do. And then from there, guys, I want to tell you that I have seen things that I wouldn't want my worst enemy to see. I have seen things that you would only expect to see in your nightmare. I've seen them roaming the streets. And I've questioned whether or not if I'm sane. And my family for years would tell me, Micah, if you see something, don't tell me. I don't want to know. And this is a hereditary trait in my family. Because I had an auntie, her name is Justine, Lord rest her soul. This is her image. She would see them like I would. And this is my mother's eldest sister. And my auntie Justine would always call me her namesake because she and I both share this giant freckle on her face. Hers was over her left eyebrow. And this has just been a recurring theme in my life as I got older. But guys, that's going to conclude our second story. And we're going to move into the third and final story of the night, which is called Sinister Shadow. Alright guys, brace yourselves, because this one is even scarier. This story, as I said before, is called Sinister Shadow. Now this happened to me many years later, where I lived in a house that I would eventually graduate from high school from. And mind you, I live in Los Angeles during the 90s, so fun times in LA. But guys, this happened to me years after my eldest brother Marcus and his then wife, who is now his ex-wife, they had their first child. They were teen parents. And my eldest niece is named Makisha. This is her image here. And she had a little sister who was born a year later, who was a preemie by the name of Malaya. That's her right there. Aren't my babies cute? Now, mind you, I spent a lot of time with my nieces and nephews. I helped raise them, I looked after them. I essentially see them as my children, though they are not mine biologically. But on this particular day, my mother and my sister had to go to a doctor's appointment where my niece Melina, who had she had a respiratory issue, a serious asthma ailment because she was a preemie, and she needed to go. They needed to go to the doctor. Now I was in junior high at this time. The junior high I went to was John Muir Middle School, and if you're hip with Los Angeles, you know exactly where this school is. Um, I ended up getting out of school early. It was a Thursday, so it was a minimum day. So I got home around 12:30, and my mom and my sister said, "Hey, we got to go run these errands. Can you look after Keisha?" I said, "Sure, no problem." And because I got home so early, Keisha was still awake, and my mom and my sister left soon after. And at 2 p.m., I would lay all the children to sleep. At the time, my two nieces were living with us at the time with their parents. And Keisha, at 2 p.m., I put her to sleep, just like always, and I did my homework. And I said around 3 o'clock, I should be done with my homework. Keisha will be awake. I'll make her a snack, and I'll wash dishes. Because I don't know about y'all, but I had to wash dishes and cook, do laundry. I did the whole 9 yards. All of us did when we were kids. My mother ensured it. But moving on from that, like 3 o'clock, Keisha got up. She was hungry, made sure she used the potty, did all the normal things I would do as if it was a normal day of the week. Okay, guys. I put my niece in her high chair. I give her some Cheerios so she can eat, and then I start washing dishes. Guys, I didn't say this before, but I want you to understand when I got older, I began to have a full body trigger to let me know I was either going to see, hear, feel, or experiencing something from the paranormal. Normally, right before I see a ghost or experience something supernatural, I get a full body experience by my entire body feeling like it's asleep. You know when your foot falls asleep and it gets that tingling sensation? Well, I feel that literally from the top of my head to the soles of my feet. No part of my body is free from this experience. It's a very uncomfortable experience if I'm to be honest. And right before I sense it, right when that happens, right, and then shortly afterwards, like not even a few seconds later, I'll experience something. But this was a different experience. This hit me hard. And guys, it hit me so hard that I remember I actually took an exhale. And as if by an invisible force, something was turning my body towards my niece. Now, mind you, in the kitchen, this is the other house, this is a diagram of the house. This is where I'm at in the kitchen, where it's highlighted, and my niece was in her high chair next to the back porch where you would see the dishwasher, the washing machine and all of the stuff. So that's where she was sitting, and I was by the kitchen sink. And now, mind you, again, I'm not an architect, so the dimensions are off, but that kitchen was kind of small. Again, by some invisible force, I turn around and I look behind me. I've never felt powerless before. Like a kid, I was a kid, so I always felt powerless. But in this moment, I felt even more powerless because I saw a shadow, fully three-dimensional shadow, moving and billowing towards my niece. And my niece at the time was only 2 years old. And I'll never forget her expression. She had her hands flat like this on her high chair. Her mouth was open wide in a silent scream. Her eyes full of tears as she's looking at this thing come towards her. And as if she knew I was seeing whatever she was seeing, she looks towards me in a silent plea for help. And I was 13. And I was home alone with a 2-year-old. Now, I know people who have probably raised their nieces and nephews or brothers and sisters or whatever, and maybe experienced something traumatic like this. So maybe you'll be able to relate. And in the moment I experienced this, I was like, what do I do? And this thing was growing closer and closer to my niece. And in some strange fit of, I guess, parental, I don't know what you call it, superhuman speed, I just remember rushing towards my niece and feeling the icy chill of that thing. I snatched the high chair top off. I yanked my niece out. Somehow I did all this without injuring her. And I run to my front door as if my life depended on it. Because the sheer malice and threatening danger coming off this shadow, I have never felt before. And I didn't know what, my senses were in overload. All I knew is that I needed to get out of the house and I needed to take Keisha. So I grab my niece, I hold her, and she is just screaming. I'm surprised no one called the cops. I'm not even kidding. I run to my front door. Now, mind you, some of you may be familiar with this style of home, but we had a wooden door and an iron door. The iron door was locked, the wooden door was open. Mind you, this is in the afternoon, like maybe around 3 or 4, like around the late part of 3, early part of 4 in the afternoon. I fling that door open, I run down the stairs, and I run all the way to the edge of the sidewalk where, all the way to the edge of my house where I lived until you reach the city sidewalk. And I couldn't go anywhere else. So with my niece screaming and crying in my arms, and I'm trying to console her while trying to keep myself under control, I turn around and the thing was at the door. That means that the thing that was in my kitchen followed me to my front door. But it didn't leave the house. And at the time, my neighbor, who I knew well, wasn't home. So there was nowhere for me to go other than to stand on the sidewalk and staring at my front door with the demon that wanted to hurt us. And at the time, guys, this is during the late 90s. There were no cell phones. And I was 13, so I didn't have a pager. So who could I call? So all I did was hold tight to my niece while she cried herself to sleep, screaming for her mother. And I sat on the edge of the sidewalk where the steps would lead up into my home. I just sat way away from the house and I turned my back on the front door because I couldn't stare at the thing anymore. And I just began to pray. Now, a lot of you may think prayer, religious beliefs, all that is hogwash. Here's what I know. There is power in the name of God, Jesus, Yahweh, Krishna, whatever you want to call him, Elohim, Yahweh. There is something in that name. Because an oversensing realm of calm and protectiveness washed over me, there is something in that name that repels dark spirits, or spirits in general. And that's all I could do. And for about, it felt like an eternity, but it was probably maybe 10 to 20 minutes that my mother and my sister showed up. And they found me sitting on the edge of the steps that led to the street. And my mom was like, Mikey, what is going on? Because they probably thought it was a fire. I had no idea. You know, my mother and my sister came home. And I remember my niece woke up, cried for her mother. I hand Keisha off to her mom. And I tell my mom my experience. And my mom is one bad motherfucker. Mom, this one's for you. My mother grabbed my hand and she said, what did you see? And Mom, I'm pretty sure you remember this. She went through the house and she just began to pray. Whatever was in the house was gone. But I remember, even though I know my mother was afraid, she prayed. And it brought me a level of comfort I can't explain. There is nothing quite like a mother's protection. But my mother and I prayed, and it brought me to some sense of calmness. But I'm going to tell you guys, that experience, it scarred me for life. And it was a long time before I felt really comfortable being alone with my nieces and nephews. Because I can tell you guys, I've never felt so helpless and powerless before in my life. And I've had some moments where I felt pretty damn powerless, but that was one that took the cake. To be a child, to try to protect another child, is an experience I never want anyone to experience, especially against the supernatural. Because what do you do? Other than, if you believe in a God, pray. That I've experienced some things, and trust me, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Because I have seen things in broad daylight, as I said before. I've seen things while I've been with my friends. I've seen things where I've been with my wife. It was so crazy one time in this very apartment that I live in. I saw something. I told my wife. She pulled out her cell phone, and I wish I had the footage to show you. And she saw everything I was telling her that I was seeing with my naked eye. And guys, I have shit eyesight. I cannot see very well. At night, I probably shouldn't be driving, but I wear my glasses though. I'm going to be safe. But I have very bad eyesight, and I could see everything from the orbs to the shape of the figures of the bodies, everything. And she captured it all on an old cell phone that we really don't own anymore. But guys, there's just so many stories I could tell you. But those are 3 stories that I felt would really set the tone for things I've experienced. And I'm pretty sure you guys are talking in the chat while this has been going on. And again, I want to ask you, what have you experienced? Have you ever experienced ghosts? Or do you just think that I'm utterly crazy and I'm just talking out of my ass? You know? But with that said, guys, these experiences are real because I live them. And even though I've never truly tried to channel or summon or exercise, because I just don't dabble in that. After seeing the things I've seen in my life, I would never try to conjure up anything. Because what you don't see, I can. And what I can see, you don't want to know what I'm looking at. And I'm not saying that to say like I have some kind of power. No, I just don't dabble in it. I don't screw with it. I don't do, I steer clear of it. So, and I say that to you because I'm so serious about it, because the spiritual realm is real. And what's on the other side can be quite dangerous if you don't know what you're dealing with. So use caution on this All Hallows Eve when you're dealing with the spirits. Some spirits are good, some are not. And you just got to be careful. Because the next unseen visitor may not be a friendly Casper or friendly ghost. Could be something far more sinister. And guys, like I said, I'm not the only one in my family that had these experiences. Even my wife, Christina, has experienced the supernatural. And I'll save that story for another time. But as I said before, let me know in the comment sections, what do you think of these stories? Were they chilling to you? Do you think I was full of it? Or did you just enjoy the show? But with all that said, guys, do me a huge favor by considering liking this video, subscribing to my channel, leaving me a comment in the comment section down below, hit the notification bell so you're always notified when I am summoning spirits just for you. And then remember my golden rules of washing your hands, wearing gloves, practicing social distance, giving everyone love and respect, because that's how you'll get it in return. Remember, on this channel, we do one thing. We live, think, and dream big, because it's the only way to be in 2020 and beyond. And hello to all my new subscribers. We are well on our way to 200 subs, and I can't wait to meet you there. So with all that said, happy Halloween! I tried to sound like the Crypt Keeper. I failed utterly. Okay, bye!